The Christmas Ember by Daniel Miller. December had lost its magic. The town was draped in rain. The cold drizzle drenched the streets. Under the gloom of grey skies, Christmas lights flickered above and inside the windows as their colours dwindled. Within the shops, overworked employees drifted like empty spirits, wrapping up gifts, rounding up sales, and smiling insincerely. Outside in the grime, David walked alone, his breath fogging in the cold with each step. He was a young, well-kept and handsome man with an admirable physique, but his soulful hazel eyes had lost their spark. His dark green jacket clung to him like a second skin under the downpour as he passed a volunteer dressed as Santa Claus ringing his bell. He stood next to scraps of change. "Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!" he chanted tirelessly as people blankly walked without acknowledging his existence. David's apartment was small, with one bedroom, kitchenette and lounge, almost occupied by a couch and a coffee table, upon which a small, barely decorated Christmas tree gave the illusion of life. On the couch, David sat down with a microwaved dinner in front of the TV as it droned monotonously over the rhythmic tapping of the rain. That night played out just like any other, until suddenly something began stirring. David woke up to the sounds of shifting or scraping, as if there was something moving around within his walls. He felt the hairs stand on the back of his neck as he stood up and moved to the kitchen and grabbed a frying pan to defend himself. His heart pounded faster when he realized the sound was coming from the old fireplace in the lounge, but that fireplace hadn't been used in years. David braced himself quietly as his grip tightened. Suddenly, in a soft thud and dusty wave of glistening snow, she appeared. David stood still like a statue. He couldn't believe his eyes. She was absolutely stunning. Blonde hair flowing in waves, eyes of crystal blue full of delight, pointy elf-like ears poking out from underneath the red Santa hat. The outfit she wore was festively bold, a small cape covering a red crop top trimmed in white fur, a matching miniskirt, striped high-thigh stockings, high-heeled boots, and elbow-length gloves. As she took to her feet, she looked like Christmas personified.
"Hi there,"
she beamed with a pearly white smile.
"I'm Meredith, and I'm here to spread the joy of Christmas."
She finished stretching out her arm for a handshake. David blinked blankly. You... Did you just come through my chimney?"
"Why, of course,"
Meredith said as she brushed the snow from her miniskirt.
"It's Christmas Eve."
David continued staring, frying pan still ready. Are you real?" Meredith lightly stepped forward, gently lowering David's arm.
"Yes,"
she smiled warmly.
"I am real. Now, there's no easy way of saying this,"
she said with the innocence,
"but I'm here because you still have it."
She then placed her fingertips on David's chest.
"The ember."
"The what?" David was perplexed as he took a step back from Meredith.
"That tiny flicker of joy."
Her smile eased off a little as her crystal gaze met David's hazel eyes. "I can tell that you haven't been happy for a while now, but I can tell the little ember of joy, that tiny warm ember, it's still there." David looked at her silently as she concluded. Her wholesome smile grew back again.
"It's rare these days, but it's still there.
David gently brushed Meredith's hands off his chest and scoffed. Okay. Hold on a minute. You've come into my home, through my chimney, to tell me about how I've been feeling, and about some ember that's inside my body? Haven't you looked outside lately? Meredith spoke with a voice as soft as her smile.
I have indeed. That's why I'm here.
She walked up to David again.
That's why I need you.
David looked more confused. Need me for what? Meredith realized the vibe wasn't what she'd hoped as she dialed back her enthusiasm. With a deep and gentle breath, she composed herself.
Maybe it's better if I showed you.
She politely offered David her gloved hand.
If you'll allow me, that is.
David could tell that this strange, albeit adorable woman didn't pose any threat. He also thought it was unusual for someone in this town to be this committed to celebrating Christmas, with the mess of toxic politics, tax rises, and dangerously flawed monitoring systems. All right, David sighed. I'll humour you. Meredith's face lit up with glee as she flexed her hand again. David cautiously put his hand in Meredith's gloved palm, and then suddenly the room started to shimmer. A gentle wind whipped up from the floor, and snowflakes began to materialize and swirl around the space as the apartment faded and melted into light. Before David knew it, he wasn't in his apartment anymore. David felt the cold air, gentle in contrast to the weather back home, and surveyed the snow blanketing the landscape. He saw twinkling lights all around, a small town square of vibrant and colourful buildings adorned with decorations, and a large, thick Christmas tree covered to the top with ornaments. The sky was a deep blue, speckled with stars that hung high above the falling snowflakes, and the air was scented with pine, mistletoe, cinnamon, and roast chestnuts. David was awestruck. Could he really believe he was standing in another world? Unlike his neighborhood, this town's atmosphere sparked a feeling of amazement, or something along those lines. David couldn't recognize it, as he hadn't felt much positivity in a long time. This unusual feeling in his chest amplified as he took in the world around him. Where? David stuttered his words as he tried to comprehend what just happened, and how. Meredith chuckled as she beamed with happiness.
This is Christmas. My home. Well, to you I guess this is what you would call the North Pole.
All around David and Meredith, under the gentle snowfall, elves bustled and walked through the streets. Through the misted windows he could see elves working in cozy workshops with laughs of joy and wonder. David took it all in as he turned around. It's like the stories they told us when we were kids.
Exactly,
Meredith said as she took David along by his hand toward a large burgundy building. Suddenly, the bubbly warmth of her personality melted into a cool, upset uncertainty.
This is the reason why I brought you here.
Meredith lightly pushed open the door and took David inside. The room inside felt clinical, with tiled flooring and dim lighting. Before them was a bed, bathed in a golden light. David and Meredith approached the bed, seeing a large body laying under a fluffy duvet. There was no doubt in David's mind. It was Santa Claus.
Here he is,
Meredith said softly as she moved to the end of the bed.
Father Christmas.
David looked upon the legendary man in speechless awe. He's real. I mean, he's actually real. In his astonishment, he noticed a faintly pulsating aura of light from Santa as he lay in his bed. What's happening with him? David asked.
He's saving his energy.
Meredith explained softly.
The truth is, Santa is more than the man in the red suit with magical flying reindeer. He's a spirit. He's the very essence of Christmas.
She looked upon Santa with worry.
But the lack of joy in the overworld, your world, it made him weak, sick, and tired. Now he's barely awake for an entire year.
David looked at the sleeping Santa, and then down at his feet in existential thought. I had no idea. He then looked up at Meredith. But I don't understand. Why did you pick me? Why not find someone who actually is jolly and merry? I don't think I can be of any help.
Yes, you can.
Meredith jumped on the end of his sentence before examining his torso with her hand. Because you still care.
Deep down inside you, that little ember, that tiny spark, that's all you need.
David listened as he looked at Meredith, then looked at her hand, and then back to Meredith as she changed her tone slightly.
The thing is, David, I've known about you for some time, since I was Santa's secretary, going through his lists, preparing his routes, and tending to his reindeer. But when I saw your name in the list and looked through the void between worlds...
Meredith managed to raise her head to meet David's eyes, as if a weight were lifted from her shoulders.
At your best and your worst, I could see that purity deep inside of you, that joy waiting to be unlocked. And I know, I hope, that ember of yours can save Christmas.
David sat on the candy cane bench while the snow fell. Something Meredith said just kept ringing in his mind. But when David felt a tiny thud from behind his chest, all of the pieces fell into place. His heart was like a tiny radiator under the palm of his hand. The more David felt his heart's warmth, the more he realized that the crazy elf girl actually wasn't crazy. By his own touch, David remembered the first time his heart felt so warm like that. The last Christmas Eve he wasn't alone.
David?
Meredith piped softly as she came out of the building. David, still deep in thought, acknowledged her as he stood up silently, fighting a teary ember behind his eye before turning to see her. You said you saw it? The ember, you called it? David asked without his voice trembling.
Yes,
Meredith replied, seeing the turbulence of his inner self.
I've seen it.
David approached her, his trepidation turning into resolution. And you say that it can fix this Christmas depression? The elf took a step back and steadied herself before answering.
I believe it can. I believe that you can.
David tensed his chest and gritted his teeth a little. Then let's do it. Meredith's jaw dropped in a silent gasp, followed by a cheerful grin of delight. In agreement, they entered Santa's workshop, the base of operations. From the front entrance to the far wall, excited elves work relentlessly as they built electronic and plastic toys, rings and jewels, soft pillows and cushions, oak tables and furniture. Seeing smiles, banter, and hopes higher than the locals he lived amongst, David saw the purest forms of festiveness. Meredith opened the door to a laboratory beyond the far wall. Inside were more elves wearing green lab coats, goggles, and black rubber gloves as they dabbled with chemicals and Bunsen burners while adding finishing touches to some snow globes.
This is it,
Meredith said as she stopped before a contraption that looked like a laser mounted on a crane.
This will amplify the ember? David asked. Yes, Meredith answered. And extract it too.
Theoretically, but we've never tried it.
Jarl, an older elf who wore a grey lab coat and a red-tipped yellow hat, called out behind them.
Especially not on a human.
Jarl, please listen. Meredith was interrupted.
However, in the interests of science and saving Christmas, I will allow it.
The scientist grinned as he cleaned his semi-circled glasses.
Besides, I'm not one to pass up any kind of experiment.
Meredith lit up. David stood before the laser, and Jarl summoned his assistants as he mounted the controls.
On my mark.
Jarl ordered, clicking dials and buttons as the elves inspected the safety valves and temperature gauges. The machine whirred into life. The eye of the laser focused on David's chest as Jarl instructed him to remove his shirt. Meredith watched from behind, her hands clutched together over her heart.
Mark!
A powerful beam speared into David's chest. He winced as it pinched his heart. The gauges crept into the red zone as sparks dazzled and fumes seeped from the laser and control panel. Suddenly, the machine whirred into silence as the laser stopped. A bleeping noise echoed from the control panel as a side compartment opened, revealing a snow globe. Jarl and the elves rushed to inspect it, while Meredith ran to check on David. Inside the globe, snow fell all around a statue of a young boy, wrapped in a blue coat, wearing a red snowcap, and holding a glowing present in his hands. With his shirt back on, David came over to the elves as he saw the globe. Meredith saw it too, as her heart felt like it skipped a beat. As David held the globe in his hands, he saw the ember pulsating inside the present held by the boy. Then David looked at the boy inside the globe with recognition. It can't be. But he knew it was true. He was looking upon a moment of his own past. David and Meredith stood outside as the snow fell peacefully. What does this mean, Meredith? David asked. Why am I in this globe? He thought to himself.
It means that you found your ember, David.
Meredith replied with a smile.
That one moment of your life when it burned the brightest.
David looked into the globe in his hands as he felt a warmth from its base in his palms. Suddenly an idea came to him. Would breaking it release its energy? Meredith appreciated his optimism.
Yes, but you have to do it in a specific way,
Meredith continued.
Each time someone is given their own snow globe, if they look into it hard enough, they can see their own ember. Then all they have to do is release it.
But how, Meredith? How do you release it?
By telling someone a story about the moment in the globe,
she spoke. David then took her hand. We're going back to my world, to the town square.
Okay.
Meredith was overcome with joy as she clasped her free hand on top of David's. She focused her energies on returning to the overworld. The winter wonderland melted away as it contorted into the drab, grey and soggy reality of David's world. The festive elves and wondrous snowlands had turned into horrid, soggy concrete under a soulless, stormy night. All around, people walked in silent, crippling depression as the falsely cheerful tunes droned beneath the monotonal pitter-patter of the rain. After one look around, David grew angry at his own world. He tightened his grip around the snow globe in resolution and made his way down the street. On the town square, Meredith tried her best to be inconspicuous among the crowd, wearing a long, grey raincoat with a hood to hide her elf ears. She anxiously scanned the street corner as she saw David emerging. Noticing Meredith in disguise, David approached her. "There you are," David sighed, despite feeling the harsh rain stabbing him repeatedly.
Where do we go now, David?
Suddenly a loud rumble from the heavens and sporadic flashes within the clouds gave David an idea. The ill flicker of a Santa above the town's coffee bar caught his eyes. "I know where," David said as he took Meredith by the hand and entered the building. Inside the coffee bar was lukewarm. The walls had stressed and aged photos, warped wallpaper, and dust lay all around on the tables and chairs. David, with Meredith in hand, only focused on getting up to the roof. The roof was no different from the streets under the filthy rain and cold. The voices of arrogance and judgment echoed over the townscape. In a swift motion, David ran to the edge of the roof and looked up. He and Meredith saw the first streaks of thunder pierce the clouds. "This is it," David thought to himself.
David, what are you doing?
Meredith called out as she kept her hand on her coat's hood, and David came back from the edge to tell her. "I'm going to finish this, Meredith," he said as he raised his snow globe in his hands. "I'm going to finish this story."
What do you mean?
Meredith sounded perplexed, and a loud crash of thunder lit up the town with a flash. David looked up and saw bolts of lightning inching closer to the town square. "It's now or never," David thought to himself, his grip around the base of the globe tightening as he ran forth and his face became etched with determination. Meredith gasped in shock, thinking David was going to jump.
David, no!
She cried loud as she rushed after him. David stopped just before the edge and threw the globe into the air, hard and fast with all the energy he built up. Meredith stopped right beside him as they both watched the globe spinning upwards before a deafening clap of thunder struck the glass. The snow globe was dashed to pieces, the sounds of glass shattering drowned out by the thunderclap. With the bolt so close to them, the light almost blinded Meredith and David as they shielded their eyes from the glare. In the cataclysm, the statue of young David was destroyed. Flakes burned into embers as a potent, warm aura flared from the globe, misting through the air, spiraling up the lightning bolt and into the sky. Down below, the lingering echo of the blast caught the attention of every man, woman and child. Up above, the clouds were softly ripped apart by gentle wisps of light, changing through all strengths of colours and brightness. Far and wide, all eyes beheld a spectacle that brought to many their first smile, their first joyful tears. At last, the rain had completely stopped, and the skies cleared. Finally, the first flakes began to fall. On the streets, people started to feel alive. A child laughed, an elderly couple smiled, a shopkeeper stepped outside relieved, a pair of youths held hands. From the roof, David and Meredith witnessed the change as they heard the town square sing Christmas carols down below. Feeling a sense of accomplishment, David smiled. He did it. His Ember did it. Ho ho ho! A deep voice called out distantly. David and Meredith looked up to the sky and saw the full moon eclipsed by the familiar shadows of reindeer and a sleigh with a large figure holding the reins.
Merry Christmas!
The voice called out once more before fading into the night. Meredith was overjoyed to see that shape grace the skies again as she removed her long coat. David felt the weight of the world lifting off his shoulders. He turned to see Meredith, all cheerful and hope-smitten, welcoming that warm feeling in his heart again. In his realization, his smile relaxed as he paid more attention to his chest as it warmed further. Meredith looked at David with that cute, wholesome demeanor she was known for as she took his hands.
We did it, David.
She cheered gleefully.
You did it.
She reinforced with a smile, her precious crystal blue eyes meeting his freshly liberated hazel gaze. Meredith, David spoke softly. Thank you. He smiled peacefully.
What is it?
Meredith asked, reading the expression in David's gaze. Resolutely, David took a deep breath and took a step closer to her, gently holding her hands in his. Meredith, I need to tell you something. She fell silent as David mustered his courage. For the past few years, life wasn't worth living. I've been suffocating, isolated, and broken inside. But tonight, with you, you've made me feel happy again. A warm smile grew on David's face as his eyes held firm. His words left Meredith breathless, the corners of her crystal eyes starting to swell.
David,
she gasped in a hushed tone. You're the best thing that's happened to me, Meredith, David said softly. Before Meredith knew it, her lips were touched by his.
Written and narrated by Daniel Miller, The Christmas Ember was brought to you by Ouse Valley Radio and sounds freesound.org.